It's ironic, but it's 100% true. I woke up on my 30th birthday, couldn't tie my shoes, and I just felt something tighten in my back. I had cortisone shots, tried all that, physical therapy for about 2 years. Nothing really got better. I was taking it prescribed, probably 3 a day, and then it led to 5, so much that I got blacklisted from painkillers. I don't know if people noticed, would say I had it under control. I was probably taking close to 35 or 40 a day. I would snap at the littlest things. I was drinking. I was hiding it. I would, lay with the kids when they go to sleep, but I'd have a drink next to the bed. Anxiety, depression, and guilt. We got to a point where she's like, you need to do this or we're gone. I was like, I need help.
Hey there, welcome to the Mental Perk podcast. I'm Carla Hutcherson, licensed professional counselor.
And I'm Brandy Mock, entrepreneur, author, and community leader. And we're here to talk about
real people, real issues, and real talk.
Welcome back to the show. Today on Mental Perk, we are joined by a husband, father, fighter who's reclaiming his life one day at a time. After his back injury in 2014 led to prescription that spiraled into addiction, he found himself chasing relief through pills, Kratom, and eventually alcohol. What started in hotel rooms, work trips, became a secret he could not hide until his wife looked at him in the eyes and said, "You're in a bad place." Now, nearly 9 months sober, he's here to share the real story behind the struggle, how addiction crept in, how he almost lost himself, and how recovering is giving him everything back. This is raw, real conversation about pain, shame, healing, and hope. Let's dive in. Thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's talk about in the beginning, when did you realize something wasn't right?
I would say probably 2023 in the spring.
Okay.
So I was working at a job. I thought it was great. I was traveling. I was kind of doing what I had done in the past, but the culture wasn't there. So I was happy doing the job, but the people around me were not jiving, I guess you'd say. And that's what led into more drinking when I was working. I liked the work, but at the end of the night, I just had more than I should have.
And this was this prior to your back injury?
This is after.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was alcohol. I guess going to the back injury, it's ironic, but it's 100% true. I didn't have back problems as a kid. My dad had some back issues. I had some pain, in the lumbar area, but nothing really bad. But I woke up on my 30th birthday, no joke, couldn't tie my shoes.
Wow.
I bent down to tie my shoes, and I just felt something tighten in my back. And so much that I went to the floor, and I laid down. And I laid there, and I was dressed to go to work here in Addison. And I tried to tie my shoes. I finally did. I muscled through it, thinking it was just a tightness, like a muscle strain.
Like a spasm or something? Yeah.
And so I went to the office. I tried to sit in my chair and, stretch it, and it just got worse. And at noon, I looked to a coworker, and I was like, you got to take me to, urgent care. I was like, because I don't know what to do. I couldn't really stand. I couldn't walk. Sitting was everything was uncomfortable. So I went, and they're like, yeah, you've, strained your back. Here's this. Go see a specialist, whatnot. Went and saw a specialist. He said I had a muscle strain and that we needed to do an MRI. So we did that, found out I had a herniated disc, but also degenerative disc disease. So my L4 and L5 basically didn't have any cartilage in between it.
So it's bone on bone, basically.
Bone on bone, yeah. And so I had cortisone shots, tried all that, physical therapy for about 2 years. Nothing really got better. So
Did they constantly give you pain medications to manage this?
Yeah, I was in a pain management program.
It started in the ER and then went through your doctor after that. Okay.
Yeah. And so I did that for 2 years. Finally, I went and saw another doctor just for a second opinion, and he goes, we need to do a fusion. And I was like, and I'm 32 thinking a spinal fusion. So I started looking it up, and I was like, that doesn't seem like a rod at 32 in my back is a good thing, because at least everything that I read said that it starts in the back and then they just fuse your whole spine over the time of your life. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So I got a second opinion. And I saw a doctor, I'll call him out because he was awesome, Dr. Dickerman.
Okay.
I guess he was a back specialist for some of the Cowboys players, things like that. And so he suggested, I said, this guy said a fusion. He's like, no. He goes, no way, not at your age. I said, okay. I said, so what do you suggest? And he goes, we should do a microdiscectomy, where it was so herniated that he goes, we'll go in, we'll cut out the herniated tissue so that that pain in the nerves goes away, and we'll kind of just watch it from there. So I did that, had that, was out for 6 to 8 weeks in a back brace. I went on a job interview on a plane that he was not happy about after 4 weeks in.
Yeah.
Tore my staples out, things like that.
Oh, wow.
So
You weren't a good patient.
No, I was not. I was not. And so I did that. I was still on a little pain management after that. And honestly, after that surgery, it was fine. But I kept going to pain management, kept taking hydrocodone, like they said.
So you're the pain, this is where I got to stop. The pain was fine, but do you feel like the addiction had kind of already crept in?
Yeah, but I hadn't realized it.
And you were taking what, Oxy at that time?
Hydrocodone.
Hydrocodone.
And how many were you taking a day?
I was prescribed one every 4 hours. So I think I was taking it prescribed, probably 3 a day. And then it led to 5 and then 6.
Did the pharmacist catch that you were getting this refilled? Okay.
Yeah, because and that's when the addiction, if I look back, I realize it. I knew that at 22 days, I could get insurance to refill. And so I started doing the math and started going, okay, I got to make it 22 days so I can get a refill. And then obviously 22 days doesn't catch up.
I mean, these are some pretty heavy drugs. So, like, how did it affect your performance, your work, your ability to function in your marriage as a father, all of these things?
So we didn't have kids then, but my work performance, I felt like it was okay. If I look back, I can see it decline. I just wasn't 100% there. I was there when I needed to be, but not all the time. I would say I was probably running 60, 70% of what I could have been doing. And so, so I started doing that, and then so much that I got blacklisted from painkillers. My doctor said, you're no longer a patient. I'm not prescribing you. This goes to, I don't know where it goes on, maybe a DEA list. I don't know. But I couldn't get a prescription anywhere.
Did you seek at different facilities? Okay.
And they said, we can't prescribe you. You're on a list. And I was like,
oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine from high school that was all into holistic stuff, he goes, hey, you should check out Kratom if you're, can't take painkillers. It's a good alternative. It's natural, things like that. Well, it's natural, but if someone produces it, there's got to be something else to it. So I looked into it, started taking it, and it was good. And like I said, the pain level was very minimal. If I had, doctor scale, it was probably like a 2 or a 3.
With the little smiley faces on the scale?
Yeah, it was a 2 or a 3. Not where it was before, of 8.
Yeah.
And so I took that, and it was more of a stimulant for me, like a caffeine boost. And so I would take that, and it would last 4 hours, and take some more, and then that eventually turned into probably 8 years of taking that.
Wow. So you were in the thick for a long time.
Yes. Okay. And I would say I had it under control. I think that's what every addict says.
Sure. So they do.
Yeah.
But on days that you didn't take it, or when they stopped prescribing the hydrocodone, did you have withdrawals?
Oh yeah.
Did people notice?
I don't know if people noticed. My energy was way down.
Oh, yeah.
I was like a zombie. I would have sweats.
Yeah, I was going to say, I could see the...
Yeah, it was constant. And I didn't think, I guess in the back of my mind, I thought it was withdrawals. But you always push through, go, oh, no, I can make it through this. And you get to a point where you're a day out and haven't had anything, and it clicks, and you're like, I gotta go.
Got to do something.
Yeah.
With the stimulant, then, if you didn't have it, did you go into a depression? Did you go deep in a low?
Yeah, and that was another thing that I didn't, looking back on, there was definitely depression that came on, probably with withdrawals. And I think that's what egged that on. There was probably anxiety in there as well. Anxiety of, I need this, more or less, than anything else. But yeah, it was crazy.
At what point do you think your wife, how far into this addiction do you think it was before your wife was like, I mean, was she having planting little casual seeds in there?
Yeah.
Like, hey, Scott?
Yep.
Or was it a breaking point?
It was casual seeds in there. So when our first son was born in 2017, there were times where I was trying to wean myself off of it, and I couldn't. And so I'd be like a zombie, and we'd be driving, and I'd get drowsy, and she'd notice it, and she's like, what are you doing? And so I tell her, I was like, I haven't had anything today. And she's like, well, we got to stop this. And then it would go on for a while. Nothing said, continue on.
Did she ever know how much you were taking?
No, not at all. And she just thought it was kind of a casual thing.
Yeah.
Now, did you tell her you'd been blacklisted from pain pills?
Yeah.
And what'd she say to that?
And she goes, that's a problem. And I said, yeah. I said, so, and at that point, she thought I was taking Kratom, but not to the extent of where, like, pain pills were. And I guess maybe she didn't know enough about it. Again, I didn't know enough about it either. But she kind of just, I don't want to say wrote it off, but kind of rolled with it, if you will, and didn't think it was that bad.
Because it's more natural, and she's thinking, I mean, I kind of would have thought that too, right? But so how many Kratoms were you taking a day?
So I tried, they have a powder where you just put it like a teaspoon or a tablespoon, and you kind of just wish it around your mouth, and it tastes absolutely terrible. I mean, it is terrible. So they have capsules. So I went to capsules, and there was 500 milligram capsules, and I was probably taking, at the beginning, 4 every 4 hours.
Wow.
So 12.
And I'm thinking about this. You're kind of regulating this yourself, and you're
Yes.
probably not even doing what you're supposed to do with
Yeah.
it. I can imagine what this is doing to your heart.
Yes, 100%. So yeah, I was regulating it myself. And then obviously over time you develop a tolerance to it. And so then I would adjust. And
Just
I'd
like
say,
you would with pain pills.
Yes.
Same thing. You
And
got to
so-
up it because
yeah, exactly.
your body's not responding. You're building up a tolerance to it.
So you just keep upping it. And towards, I'd say last fall, I was probably taking close to 35 or 40 a day.
What?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I can't imagine the caffeine that's running through your body.
Yes.
How did you sleep? Did you sleep?
I did, but not very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not very well at all. I'd probably sleep 2 hours at a time and wake up for 30 minutes and then 2 hours.
You never got REM sleep.
No, never.
And then you've got to think it's adrenaline pumping through your system. So were you, and I know sometimes when you're doing that, it's almost like a roid rage.
Yes.
Did you feel angry
yeah.
a lot?
Oh, yeah.
Taking it out on your family,
Yep.
take on your wife?
Yep. There was definitely that's a good description. It's like roid rage. I would snap at the littlest things and I would notice it and then I'd reel it back and go, what was that? And then I'd move on to it. And that's my personality also is I'm very mellow usually, and I'll throw things aside and forget about it and move on. So that's what I would do. I would just...
But at the same time, you're leaving your family there
yeah.
to figure out what the heck is going on with this.
Yep.
Why are we...
why is he
Why,
acting
why
like
is this?
this?
This is not the man I married.
Yeah, exactly.
Did they just
Yep.
walk on eggshells around you?
A little bit. But also, my wife is very A-type personality. So she would go, what is wrong with you?
So she's strong.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, very. And so we got, to a point where I was drinking, I was hiding it. I would, lay with the kids when they go to sleep, but I'd have a drink next to the bed, but I'd drink so much that I'd forget, and it would be next to the bed when she woke the kids up in the morning and be like, what is this? And there were times that I, had a liter of vodka, and I'd drink it all in one night and think I didn't finish it and go to it the next morning and go, where is it? I can't find it. And it's gone. And I had gone through the whole bottle in an evening.
So you're doing the Kratom. Are you doing the alcohol at the same time with the Kratom?
Yeah, they did overlap, but I would take it before and then drink like 2 hours later. So yes and no. I wouldn't drink it with alcohol, like coincide, but it definitely overlaps. Yeah. It's in my system, absolutely.
So what do you think led up to you drinking the alcohol? Was it because the Kratom wasn't doing it, or was it because you felt, were the emotions involved, or you felt guilt? What was it? Walk me through what you had to deal with and what you were going through emotionally to get to the point where you're doing the Kratom and the alcohol.
I would say it was anxiety, depression, and guilt. Guilt and shame. Kind of hand in hand.
Can you describe some of the thoughts you were having? Because I'm sure you were getting stuck in these thought loops of just like really, tearing yourself down in a lot of ways, not being happy with who you were, but not being able to stop the process. So talk about that thought loop a little bit.
So a lot of it was work driven. So I liked what I did, but I also was kind of stuck. I felt like I wasn't going anywhere. I had a previous job where we were working to promote me, but in order to be promoted, someone else had to be promoted, and they weren't going anywhere. So I was kind of stuck in this, like a ceiling. I was stuck there. And so I was like, I'm not going anywhere. So that's when I changed jobs and thought that's where I could now climb the ladder somewhere else. And that was not a good fit. The culture wasn't there. It wasn't where I was before, where I had a great culture. It was people. It was more numbers, what'd you do today? And then it was also micromanaged to the 10th degree. I mean, so bad. And I think that's definitely when my drinking accelerated, because I was just like,
miserable.
Yeah, just miserable. And like I said, I liked what I did, but I didn't like who I was doing it with internally in the company. And so my drinking led to that. And then to your point, I felt guilt because I was like, I'm not going anywhere, but I'm kind of doing my job. I'm getting by. And I was just kind of doing the bare minimum.
You're just existing.
Yeah, existing. And it got to a point to where I was like, I know there's an issue, and I need to admit it. And I would admit it. I go, man, I've got a drinking problem. I need to stop. And this went on through my head for 6 months. I mean, maybe even longer. I know definitely 6 months.
Was the guilt only associated with your job, or did it go into marriage, fatherhood?
Yes, because I was traveling for work, so I had guilt that I wasn't there. I was missing, school functions from kindergarten and first grade, traveling for work. I thought I was a great father being there, but I was always under the influence of something. I mean,
Today's episode is sponsored by Hudson Financial Group. At Hudson Financial Group, their goal is to make sure your life is fully covered. Do you truly understand your current insurance coverages? Are you protected for the things you need and not paying for the things you don't? Come by and let them help maximize and understand your coverage. With access to multiple carriers, they'll find the best protection at your best price for you. Whether it's home, auto, farm, and ranch commercial coverages, bonds, life insurance, or financial planning, Hudson Financial Group is your one-stop shop for insurance and retirement needs. Stop by today.
So I was there, but
weren't there.
I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely guilt in that. And the guilt that I had an addiction and I was just existing and trying to deal with it.
So at any point through all of this, did you think about seeking therapy, or were you in therapy?
I did. I was not.
Okay.
I did think about seeking therapy. I actually went because my sister-in-law lives in Indianapolis, and I actually went up there before I started this previous job that I had that I didn't like. And so I went up there and I was like, I need to stay with you. I'm going to get sober. And I stayed up there for 2 weeks and I didn't have anything. I was a zombie the entire
I was
time.
going to say,
But you didn't do this with a professional.
No.
No, and that's something we don't recommend
Yes.
because when you
would not.
cold turkey off of alcohol, it could kill you. It
Yep.
could literally kill you.
And all the other substance with the high
Yeah.
levels of caffeine and
Yes,
stimulant,
yes.
doing all of that can cause heart issues.
Yep. And I was a zombie for 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, I'm good. So
You're
I
not
came back
good.
home. And what did I do the next day?
Relapse.
Yep. So I didn't even go 2 weeks. And so I dealt with that again for...
And then the guilt kicks in
Yep.
again. And then
like I
shame.
couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to your point, I would not recommend that at all.
No.
By yourself.
No,
That is
that's a
not...
scary
Absolutely
thing
not. It's
to do.
dangerous.
It
It's
is.
very dangerous.
I mean, I'm glad you survived it, but there are so many people
Yes.
who don't. That's
And people don't realize that, and I know this because I've dealt with this with a family member myself, is, I implemented this tough love. Didn't realize, because I didn't know, you know what it's like to be around an alcoholic. You know what it's like to hear the excuses, all of that. But after a family member goes through it for so long, you become yourself, it starts affecting you mentally.
Yeah,
You became angry. You became, resentful. You have all these things. So I had implemented this thing of, hey, why don't you get away with me for a little bit? And I was you're not going to have a drink. You're not going to have a drink. And it took me getting a phone call from someone saying, you can't just cold turkey that person because if you do, it could kill them.
Yep.
I did not realize the danger of just making someone stop drinking. It's super dangerous, Carla, right?
It is very dangerous, yes.
Yeah.
It's one thing if you're talking like a couple drinks a night situation versus the amount that you were drinking, right?
Yeah.
So that's a very different
Well,
thing.
when you're waking
It's
up drinking a case or two of beer in the
yeah,
morning,
that's
that's an issue.
That's
Yes.
a huge
It
issue,
is.
and your body learns to function with that,
Yeah.
and that's why you get the term functional alcoholic,
Yes.
right? So
High functioning,
yeah,
too. Yeah.
And
Yep.
so your body just gets used to it, and so when you just strip it away, the body goes in shock.
So I say that to our listeners of if you're dealing with someone that's a family member, you need to seek getting help and making sure you're communicating with the therapist or the doctors because it can be very dangerous to have my mentality I had. I'm talking from a person perspective viewing in. You can't just get them off of it.
Yep.
You've got to take the right steps. And so you did the 2 weeks and then you come home and you're
Relapse.
Yep. Relapsed. And then I started a new job.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
so much pressure.
So, yeah, it compounded.
Now you're putting
from
that
there.
functional alcoholic hat
Exactly.
right back on.
Yep. And a neighbor actually said that the other day. We were talking about something, and they were like, you were a functioning alcoholic. And I said, yeah, absolutely. Or functioning addict. I'll just put it in that way.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, functioning
Yeah,
addict.
because it wasn't just alcohol.
Yeah.
But there's a difference too, Carla. Explain to everybody. There's a difference between a functioning alcoholic and a high functioning alcoholic, where they actually are able to. A functioning is they're just kind of getting through the day, right?
Right.
High functioning is they get through a lot and you don't even realize that there's an issue.
Yeah, not only that, it's almost like the alcohol is a stimulant.
Yeah.
It just drives them. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say I was right in between.
Yeah.
I probably had high functioning days
Yeah.
and just functioning days.
And I'm just trying to think about your wife at this point. What is she thinking? She seems like she's got the patience of Job, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, tell me where she's at in this. This is a lot to handle.
Yeah.
And because she's managing these kids and she knows you're dealing with all this, so she's probably picking up more of the responsibilities, right?
She is. So she is a tough love person as well. And she kind of said that. She's just like, why don't you just stop? And I was like, yeah, you know what? I will. And, I'd say that. And like I said, I'd go a day and relapse. There were plenty, that probably happened on a weekly basis, where I'd had that conversation with myself, not even her saying anything. And so she kind of, I would almost say she gave up to a point of where I had to do it for myself. And then that's when we came to that realization where I lost my job. It was kind of a good thing. Like I said, I didn't like it, but they were micromanaged and they had these ridiculous reasons to let me go. But to that point, I was like, okay, this is a good thing. So I was at home. We had started an Etsy business, and I was doing that. And while I'm at home working on this, I would have drinks throughout the day because I wasn't going anywhere.
You're your own boss. You can do whatever you want to do.
I can kind of do what I want to. So that's when it got probably way more out of control. And I said this in therapy and in rehab, I got bored. And so what did I do when I was bored? I drank. Yeah. And that was part of it that led to that. And then you just add more depression in there because I'm not working. We're working on the business. Yes, that's bringing in income, but I'm not necessarily supporting the family. So you have a lot of depression in that anxiety of, did we get enough for mortgage? Did we get enough for food? Things like that. And like you said, my wife is carrying the big burden there, still working full time, still doing this side gig that I'm assisting her with, where she does most of the work. I'm just I call it shipping manager.
You kind of lost your sense of purpose.
Yes, I did. And we got to a point where she's like, it's bad, and you'll probably back me up on this. She gave me an ultimatum, pretty much. And I know they talked about it in therapy. Ultimatums are terrible for addicts, but it is what drove me. She's like, you need to do this or we're gone. And I was like...
But her ultimatum wasn't unreasonable.
No,
it wasn't like something that, that's just out there in left field. I mean, we're talking, it's an ultimatum that she had to go into survival mode at that time.
Well, and there's that fine line too of enabling.
Yeah.
And given an ultimatum. So she kind of was enabling, nothing against her because
it's hard.
We don't realize as family members the struggle because communication's not there. We've maybe not ever been had that addiction or had that addictive personality.
Yep.
So it's hard to have any grace around that, especially when you've been holding things down.
Very.
So we enable. Because of that, we just say it's better not to deal with it.
Yes.
It's better just to say, okay, if you got through A, B, and C, we're good. But then it just starts to, layer up.
Yes.
Especially the resentment she had to be feeling.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, there was a lot of resentment. Just everything was on her shoulders. And so she said this ultimatum, she's like, you need to do something. And what she did was she called my parents who were on a cruise in Europe, and they called her back the next morning. I'm not sure what the time change was. And they were like, he's coming to your house. And I was like, wait, I'm going there? And they're like, well, we're in Europe. We'll be back on this day, whatever. And so booked a flight, went to Kansas City, got there, and my mom's like, what do we do now? I was like, I need help. I need a rehab. I was like, I don't know what we do from that point. So she reached out. She had a friend from college that was a therapist or knew another doctor or something like that. And I went to Cottonwood Springs in Kansas City. And I did an evaluation, came in, and I thought it was, ridiculous at first. You go in for an evaluation, they give you a breathalyzer, and I was like, that's kind of weird. I was like,
well, they want to see if you're drunk.
Exactly. And all of it makes sense now.
Yeah.
But
not at the time.
Yeah, but I was like, this is all weird. And they're like, empty your pockets and put it in this
like
locker.
You're under arrest.
Yeah, and I was like, geez, this is a, stage 5 security place. So went back, did the evaluation, told him everything, and she goes, okay. She goes, give me, 20 minutes. I'll come back. And they go, we don't think you need to go into detox. She goes, but you need to be in intensive outpatient therapy. And I said, IOP. And I said, okay. And so I said, what is that? And she goes, it's 30 days. It's Monday through Friday. For the first 4 weeks, it was 8 to 3. Yeah, 8 to 3 p.m. And you had group therapy in the morning, and then you had group sessions with speakers and stuff like that in the afternoon. I was like, okay. So I get there the first day, and it's a hodgepodge of people. And you get assigned a therapist in a group and go in, meet everyone. In our group, we had a cocaine addict, we had alcoholics, we had marijuana, we had me with alcohol and pills, but a lot of it was alcohol. Then you'd get into afternoon sessions and you'd get other people and you'd have meth. You just had walks of life.
Of all directions.
Yes.
Well, we always say mental health doesn't discriminate, addiction doesn't
Does not,
discriminate.
yeah.
You
it
know,
doesn't.
Yeah.
and so you're going to get all walks of life.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it was good because you had perspective.
Yeah.
And it took me probably a week in therapy to really open up. Like I would share a little bit, and then about a week in, I finally let go because I never, honestly, in our paperwork, I never mentioned Kratom, but the therapist knew.
Yeah.
But she was waiting for me to bring it up.
Yeah.
All I said was, I'm an alcoholic. Went on through that, and I finally said that, and she goes, this is the first time you've admitted it. And I was like, yes. And she goes, how'd it feel? And I was like, great, actually. And everyone started asking questions. I've never heard of it. What is it? So I explained it, and they're like, huh, never heard of that. And then people would come in, and they'd go, yeah, I used it as well. And so it was like the
opened
thing.
the door.
Yeah, it opened the door for other people to open up.
Ah.
I do have to ask you, do you have addiction in your family history?
No.
Really?
No. And my wife would say my parents drink, but they don't, I wouldn't say it's an addiction. It's not every night that they
Right.
have one.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that's an addiction. I don't know. That's the weird thing. I can't.
You can't
tie it?
pinpoint where it came from.
No.
Because a lot of times, you may not be an alcoholic, but just something triggers in your brain and it can unlock that door, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to figure out where that came from. But I guess in your case, it was very medically from the back
Which is
back
it
injury.
is very
And it
common
can
too,
happen.
because you have family members that can, and I've seen it in my own, where they have back surgeries.
Yep.
And it does.
And they're taking 40, 50 pain pills a day. And it just, and they're shopping different doctors and pharmacists
Yes.
and, playing that game. So it is interesting because, well, it was the surgery that probably did it to him. But you were drinking a lot before the surgery, right?
Not that much, honestly. Like it was because my wife, and here's the crazy and the good thing. My wife really doesn't drink. She doesn't. She will have, when we were dating, that was, 25.
Yeah.
We'd go out on the weekends. That was one thing. But she was never a heavy drinker even then. She'd have 2 drinks.
Yeah.
And I could just hold my own, I guess. And so I'd have 4 or 5. But she really doesn't drink. And so that was the other thing when you're in therapy is you're hearing family dynamics. And it's like me and my husband used to drink in the garage, and now I'm here, but he still drinks in the garage, and she's going through therapy and rehab. And I'm like, I don't know how that works.
would be hard because then you go right back to it.
Yeah. The pressure.
Yeah, and so I was fortunate. Granted, I was not at home, but I knew when I was going back that she was not a drinker. So I wouldn't have to worry about that being in front of me.
Right.
And things like that. So,
which that is a blessing because people
Yes.
don't understand how hard that is to go do the hard work for that 30-day program
Yeah.
and then to walk right back in a house where
Yes.
the other person is not going to stop drinking.
yeah, exactly. And they're
It's
just doing the
selfish
same.
to me,
Yes.
especially whenever someone's putting in the time and effort to make themselves better, and you're not acknowledging it with the respect of going, hey, I want you to be better, but you're not being respected as
Yeah.
if they were because they're still drinking and doing the stuff that's going to tempt you, right?
Yep.
So
Agreed.
at the point to where you were with your wife saying you're in a bad place, what went through your mind whenever she said that to you? Like, did you, because I know sometimes with the addicts, they're like, I've heard this before, and we're, she'll be fine in a couple hours. I mean, was it very distinctive to you, Scott?
Oh, yeah.
This is I've crossed the line. She's not going to have it anymore.
Yeah, I would say my first thought was, oh yeah, couple days. I've heard it before, but this time was way different.
There was a look on her face and you knew it.
It was a tone and a look and just demeanor, and I could tell. I was like, this is it. Like there's no going back. I've got to do this, or there's nothing. And at first I was like, I can't do it. That was my first thought. And even in the first week of therapy, I was like, I don't know if I can do this, because they're throwing stats at you that, oh yeah, this person's been in here 3 times and they're going to relapse.
Oh, so you felt
discouraged.
discouraged.
And I felt discouraged, but it was good to hear those stats, because you go, okay, there's so many people that come back and do this over and over again. And that's kind of like an addiction story, is it's not always once.
Yeah.
But I also, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I have to do it once. Like, I can't go back. And so that's the one thing that I just keep telling myself, because, how many liquor stores do you drive by? And
you can even go, it doesn't have to be a liquor store. You can go to a gas station now, and there's beer and
alcohol and smoke shops.
Fireball shots, everything.
And smoke shops where I got Kratom. I mean, there's vape shops everywhere. And so I passed by them, and at first I would look at them and be like, yeah, I remember that place, and I remember this place. And now it's a fleeting thought. Like, you see it out of the corner of your eye, and it's not a big deal.
Good.
Which is obviously a very positive thing.
Are you continuing with the therapy?
I have not been seeing a therapist. I need to, because my wife is with work functions in the industry that I'm in. Yes.
She's a very good therapist.
Yes, perfect. With the work functions that I'm in, I mean, there's open bars, all this.
It's a culture there. It's a culture now, unfortunately, in work sometimes.
It is, and that's I say, not the hard thing, because I look at it, and I've told my boss now, I'm like, look, because they asked me to go to a trade show that was for beverage distributors. And I was like,
dang.
I was like, wait a second.
In the mix of that.
Yeah, and so I looked at the website, and I was like, yeah, it's pretty much an open bar. You're testing everything. And granted, I'd be working a booth.
Right.
However.
But the temptation's there.
Yeah.
It would be so much.
So I called her, and I was like, hey, look, I know I said yes to this. I was like, but I need to tell you that I am recovering alcoholic. I'll be 10 months sober when I go to this thing. I was like, but I just don't think it's a good place for me to go at this moment. I was like, is there someone that can go in my place? She goes, absolutely.
You know what? I am so proud of you. I'm going to put this out here. I am so proud of you for doing that. And I say that because, we're not saying that to just be, to lift you up. But the fact that you did that, you took the chance, and kudos to your boss.
Yeah.
Because it takes understanding, but for her to say absolutely and support you, and for you to be able to step up, that's huge. I am so proud of you.
I mean, but
it was huge.
Being able to admit it in a very vulnerable situation is huge.
Because you're worried about judgment. I mean, you and then on top of that, there's that, but there's also the pressure of going, it's hard to say, even now, I don't drink a lot, but whenever I'm in front of a bunch of people drinking, sometimes, and I've never had any addiction, but I feel bad sometimes saying, no, I'm good, I don't want to drink, because there's all this going, you don't drink?
Yeah.
I'm like, no, it's not that I don't drink, I don't want to drink.
Yeah.
So it's got to be harder on someone that actually is coming from that addiction.
Yeah, it is. And it was a huge step, because I said something to my wife, and I was like, they want me to go to this conference because it's in Vegas too.
Oh gosh,
it's the best place. You have beverage and Vegas.
And everything
what
else
happens
you
in Vegas
want.
stays in Vegas. Yeah.
And so she's like, "Should you?" And I was like, "I shouldn't."
Yeah.
And she goes, "Well, can you get out of it?" And I was like, "Probably." And so that's when I called her, and she's like, "Absolutely." She goes, "We'll get someone go in your place." And so she worked on that, and she goes, "I'm gonna go, in your place. Don't even worry about it. It's not a big deal." And I was like, okay. And so then we started talking about another meeting that we have coming up in Vegas. And so it's a national meeting. And again, you're going to have all that. And my wife was like, are you going to be okay? I was like, now that I've let her know, I was like, she already said she'd be like my wingman.
I like your accountability.
Because she doesn't want to stay out and drink all night either. And so she's like, you're my out, but also I'll help you, and we want to leave. We both leave.
I
same time.
love that.
That's
Yes.
super supportive.
I don't want to say her name, but Kudos to you, whoever you are.
Well, we were just doing an episode on leadership and
we
how to
were.
be a good
And
leader.
she
You
is
have
a
to be a
perfect
servant.
leader.
Yeah, that's
She
a great
is.
leader.
She is a great
Yeah,
leader.
that is
Wow.
awesome.
Yeah.
So
Well,
kudos to her.
Yes.
We don't want you
She's
picking up
great.
gambling now. That's not
No, that's true. That's
Not
part
at
of
all.
addiction.
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
making
trade
sure.
one for the other.
Making sure.
We're not going to do that.
No, no,
We're not
no,
gonna
no,
do
But
that.
also, kudos. What is your wife's name?
Jamie.
Jamie, kudos to you for being the woman that has stood beside him, because
I know.
it is hard. It is
Yeah.
hard, and it takes a village.
Yes.
But so you're not in therapy right now.
Mm-hmm.
What's holding you accountable?
My neighbors, number one. They were the ones texting me in rehab. How's it
I
going?
love that.
I do too.
And I came back, so I was in there in October, and our street, well, you kind of know, in Salina, our street is famous for Halloween. And we actually get barricades and we block off the street.
You're one of those.
Yes, we
Oh.
are one of those. So it is a
Are
party.
you Lot Farms?
Yes, we are. We are. So we're the famous Kingston.
Oh, you are? Okay,
yes.
okay.
So we go,
Y'all do get
balls
crazy.
to the wall.
And it's
Yeah.
very cool, though.
yes.
Very cool.
It's so neat, though. But I love that communities do that.
No, it's
It
very
is
cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
But there's people with beer carts.
Oh, yeah.
Champagne carts. I mean,
Yeah.
Jello shots
Yeah.
throughout the thing. So I came back. I got a day off, and I asked the therapist. I was like, "Hey, I want to go back for Halloween. We do this big thing, kids." And she's like, "Absolutely." She goes, "Take that Friday off, and then you just have to be here Monday." She goes, "Otherwise, we'll kick you out of the program." And I was like, "I will be here Monday." I was like, I've been doing this for a month. I was like, "I will be here Monday. You won't. Don't worry about me." She's like, "So how are you going to do it with all this drinking on the street?" And I said, "I've already talked to my neighbors." And she goes, "Okay." She goes, "Well, what'd they say?" They said, "Well, they'll slap something out of my hand if they see it."
Yeah, they will.
And they said there's lots of threats already that if I even think about it. And I was like, okay. So my neighbors and I and the kids, we all walk the street. We do that. We come back. We have fun. I put on a Michael Myers mask and scare people in the street at the end of the night.
God, he's one of those.
Yes, exactly.
He goes all out.
All out. And we had a blast.
Good.
And it was lots of fun. But they are the ones, like you said, it's a village.
It is a village.
What
They're
a,
the
what a
ones
great
that help me.
lesson, though, to know that, because I think a fear of an alcoholic is, well, if I can't drink, I can't have fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
But to be able to see, hey, I can be sober and have fun.
Yeah, and I would have said the same thing even a month into therapy. I was like, I'm not going to be my outgoing self. I'm not going to want to go to these parties or things like that. And I would have said, yeah, that's kind of in the past for me. But no, it's not. It's actually probably way better than it was if I was drinking. I'm just more clear-minded. My wife has made the comment lately. She said, I've always been funny. She goes, but you are like spot
Johnny
on.
on the spot.
Yes. And she's like, she goes, you come up with these things so fast. And I was like, clear mind, I guess. Because in the past,
clean.
I don't know, clear mind. But it feels great. Waking up in the morning, not worrying about taking an Excedrin to get over a hangover, or having having a drink to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Those things, it's awesome.
Just feeling better.
Yeah. And then also just the kids doing different things. Before I'd be like, I don't want to, take him to the trampoline park, or I don't want to do this, and now my kid, he started pitching, or will pitch in the fall. And so he's practicing, and he's like, you want to throw? I was like, absolutely. Let's go. And we'll throw.
Just more engaged.
7 days a week. Yeah. Just, yeah.
So how aware of the addiction were your children?
So when I went to rehab, they said, the conversation that my wife had with them was, he's going to see a doctor so he can get better. And so that was kind of, okay. And so they, I'd FaceTime him, and how are you doing? Good. Doing good. Is the doctor helping you? Yeah. So going through that. And then when I came back, I was brutally honest with my 8-year-old. He's now 8. He was 7. But I was brutally honest with them.
I'm so glad you
I am
are. I'm going to say, as a
too.
therapist, I'm so glad you told him the real story because he's going to grow up and he's always going to have that in his mind.
Yep.
There's going to be a healthy respect that he has for you, but he's
Yes.
also going to be cautious.
Yes.
You know, and he's going to think about things that maybe you didn't think about. And so I never think, I'm so glad that you said he's not too young.
Yeah. And that's, so I was just honest with him. I said, look, I drank alcohol too much. Alcohol's not good for you. I said that's why I had to see a doctor and get help. I said I was on medicine for a little bit, but now I'm fine, you know. And he looks at everything, even someone having an alcohol drink or whatnot, he's like, that's not healthy. And so I'm like, good. Let's keep it that way.
Yes.
Because, yeah, I mean, that was, you know, I grew up around parents that had beers or drinks every once in a while. High school kid, drank beer in high school, you know, college, fraternity, things like that. But addiction is one of those things that grows over time. So you can say, like, the depression and all that heightened the addiction, but it was always there. It was dormant, I guess you'd say. And it just escalated. And that's, and everyone has the same story. Oh, I drank in high school. It was, you know, everyone did it. It was, you know, I drank with the fraternity and we had parties, you know, drank 6 nights a week, you know, things like that. Everyone has the same story. But
not
just
everyone
escalates.
ends up as an addict.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they just have something that triggers in the brain. And that was the science. I'm not a big science person, but the science part of addiction and therapy was the most interesting piece of your brain pathways and receptors and how you're constantly grabbing for a drink because that's what you've always done. You know, emotions, thoughts, behaviors. Just in a
cognitive
circle.
behavioral therapy.
Yes, exactly. And that's what, you know, our therapist focused on. She's like, you guys have to find a new pathway. And the less or the more days you become sober, that pathway basically deteriorates.
Smaller.
Yeah. And then it almost goes away, but it doesn't go away. And that's what she was key on. She's like, don't think it just goes away. Because she's like, one drink can
relapse you into the dark hole.
that
it could
pathway.
be I mean, that one little drink, even if it's just one, can cause you to take your own life.
Exactly.
I mean, it can be a rabbit hole.
Yeah. And so she's like, it doesn't go away. She's like, but it's like dark.
Yeah.
So that was the very interesting part. And so, you know, she's like, you have to create new things, new pathways.
New addictions.
Yes,
new healthy
exactly.
addictions.
Healthy addictions.
Healthy
Addictions are okay as long
Yes.
as they're healthy, right?
Exactly. Yes. So yeah, it's you know, pickleball was one thing.
Yeah, he's a good pickleball player, just so you know.
It is
He spanks me on the court.
it is a lot of fun, and it's one thing that started 2 years ago, and again, it was with neighbors on the street, and we'd have a few beers and play, and ever since sober, I've noticed an uptick. Like, I was decent before, but I'm way
You're on
better.
your A game.
Let's just say I like to play with him, not against him.
You want him on your team.
I want him on
Yes.
my team.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
But it's loads of fun, and
It
that's
is so much fun.
Maybe
Yeah.
you'll become a pickleball pro.
oh, that would be.
You're pretty good, Scott. Pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And talk about that. That is the one thing that I do on the road when I travel.
Did you play
is-
pickleball?
Yes.
Okay.
I find places
Find
to
your
go
tribe.
play. Yeah.
Pickleball tribe.
And like, there's a great place in Austin. I only go there every 2 or 3 months, but great open play. But I've got an app that I look it up. There are open free parks, places. So I try to find that and just show up to an open play and play for an hour
That's
if I can,
awesome.
and just do that. So instead of, you know, going to the liquor store and
Having
back to
time
the
on
hotel.
your hand to think.
Exactly.
You're
just
putting it into something positive.
You know, when you're
Absolutely.
breaking a bad habit, you have
Yeah.
to replace it with good
Good.
habits.
Yeah.
Same thing with addictions. When you're breaking a bad addiction, you've got to replace it with something else
Yep.
to give you that fulfillment and really help to drive you. So I think that's just healthy for our audience to know. It doesn't have to be chemicals. It doesn't have to be alcohol. It can be food. It can be pornography. It can be cell phones. It can be a lot
Yeah,
of
it's a
different
lot
things.
of things.
Video games. There are so many addictions that take away from the quality of your life, and just replacing them with something that gives quality to your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So I have a question. What do you wish more people understood about addiction, especially those who have never struggled with it personally?
The biggest piece, and I'm sure everyone's heard this, it's a disease. I didn't choose it. I guess it chose me, I guess is what you'd say. But it's not like a decision that I made when I was 12. I was like, you know what? When I'm 40, I want to go to rehab for alcohol and Kratom addiction. It's not one of those things. And it creeps up on you. And the earlier you admit it or have someone in your circle to help you admit it and show you, the better. Because I can just imagine if I did this, 5-7 years ago, how much better it would be. And it's just one of those things that you hit rock bottom, essentially. And that's where I was. And now the only place to go is up. Right. And sometimes you have to hit the rock bottom to realize where you're at. But admitting it was the biggest thing. And we did a lot of that in therapy. We wrote a letter, and I thought it was the dumbest thing.
The letters.
The letters.
So the letter was, say goodbye. And it was, say goodbye
to your old self.
Yeah, to your old self. And so I wrote that letter, and I was like, I felt 18 times better. And I swear I could have wrote pages probably. But I kind of summarized it in it. And I sent it to my wife, and she's like, what is this?
Are you on drugs again?
She's like, I don't understand what this is. And I was like, well, it's the goodbye letter that we wrote in therapy to yourself. And so those things, those interactions in that group was a huge help. And I 100% recommend group therapy. It is.
I agree. I think it's very helpful.
Yeah.
I think it's
It
very
holds
helpful.
you accountable.
Yeah.
And then here's the coolest thing about writing the letter. Let's say 10 years from now, you're able to go back and go, wow, I got through this valley.
Yep.
I got through it with the love of my wife, my friends, the support system therapy.
Yes.
And look how far you've come. And then maybe even share it with your kiddos one day.
Yep.
I mean, whether it's addiction or whatever, it's a good something to sit down and show your children, hey, sometimes it helps to write these things out, to realize
it's a great
the dark place you're in.
exercise.
Yep.
Doesn't matter if you're addicted or not. I write stuff down all the time. And I look back and go, okay, I was in a dark place then, but I'm better now. And then it pumps you up.
It does. It does. And I've got all my notes and everything from that, outpatient therapy.
And keeping those would be so helpful to look back on, especially if you're just going through a time where the struggle's a little harder. Right now, you're kind of still on that high honeymoon phase of it.
Exactly.
And, things will, they do kind of ebb and flow. And so you have to make sure that you're keeping those notes and going back and reviewing those things so that you stay on top of it.
Yep.
What I also want our audiences to understand is exactly what you pointed out. This is a disease, and I think a lot of us get really judgmental of people with addiction. And so I'm really going to encourage people, take the route of your neighbors where I'm a support for you.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna judge you and find all the things you're doing wrong.
Yep.
I'm gonna be here and I'm gonna support you through it. And I think that the more people do that, then addicts have more to work with.
Yes. They open up.
Yeah.
What's your message in closing? We are so thankful that you've been here with us today.
Thank
But
you.
in closing, what's your message to someone that may be in the dark place that you were in previously? What is your message to them?
Ask for help. That was the one thing that I struggled with because I thought I was strong. I thought I could, again, I proved that. I thought I could do it myself. That didn't work. But ask for help. Don't be scared. Also, don't hide your emotions. That was one thing I was always doing, was just pushing everything down. Like I said, I'm a carefree spirit, and I would push things away and move on. But some things I would push away, but some things I'd push down. Be emotional. And that's the stigma in society today is men can't be emotional or ask for help or whatnot. Don't let that stop you.
Emotions
be yourself.
make us human.
Yeah, be yourself and ask for help when you need it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well,
that.
thank thank you so much for
Thanks
sharing
so
your
much,
story
Scott.
today.
Thank you.
And I
You're
sure
welcome.
hope, and I know it will.
We will be touching people's lives
We will
because
be.
there's a
Good.
lot
We will
of
Yes.
in the
Yeah.
closet addicts out
Yeah.
there. So
Yeah.
I
Yes.
think it's going to be a great door opener.
Yeah.
Yes. I
Thank
agree.
you for being on our show.
Yes, thank you.
If you or anyone you know is struggling with mental health issues, please reach out to talk to someone you trust. Get connected to a mental health professional who can help you find ways to cope and ultimately feel better. If you are having suicidal or self-harm thoughts or thoughts of hurting another person, please go to the nearest ER, call 911, or contact the National Suicide Hotline at 988. Thank you for tuning in to Mental Perk. We hope our talk today highlighted real people working through real issues based on mental health. Our goal at Mental Perk is to make sure every one of you knows you're worthy. We're in this together.